When it came to the Hyderabad State, which was under the rule of the Nizams, there were many forms of subordinate positions like the Jagidars, the Samastanamdars and the Inamdars. These people ruled the places like independent chiefs and collected land revenues. A small portion of the land revenues was given to the Nizam as peshkash, while the remaining was retained by the chiefs. In addition to collection of land revenue, the chiefs also took care of the administration of their areas.
There were around 1500 Jagirs in the Hyderabad state, which was spread over 6535 villages and 14 samsthanams over 497 villages. Around 1400 villages came under the direct control of Nizam as his personal Jagir, which is also called Sarf-e-Khas.
Now, let us see how the remaining kingdom was administered in the Nizam rule. The Nizams were under the British and hence had to follow their policies. The beginning of the 19th century saw the collection of maximum revenues through Deshmukhs, which eventually led to leaving of lands by the peasants and thereby decrease in agriculture. In the wake of such a situation, a new land revenue arrangement was introduced by the Nizam government.
According to the new land revenue arrangement, district officials were appointed to collect land revenues directly. An annual payment, rasam, was paid as compensation to the old landlords, while they were also given patta rights of complete ownership of the lands and the adjoining waste areas and forests.
Meanwhile, realizing the significance of agricultural products like castor, groundnut, etc. in the export markets, the landlords brought more waste lands for cultivation of these crops. Students, how do you think the landlords got their laborers? Veti or unpaid labor grew tremendously, through which ordinary peasants, village artisans and service casters were forced to work on the lands by the large landlords or Doras. The Doras lived in gaddis, which were huge fortified houses with a number of servants and soldiers. The Doras saw that the lower caste laborers worked for the upper caste and the landlords.
The Doras had large areas of land cultivated by tenants in addition to lands directly cultivated by the forced labor. The Doras had another important role to play in the villages as moneylenders, besides exercising judicial powers in the village. The Doras settled disputes in the village and they were partial towards the upper castes.
The other officials in the village like patwaris and smaller landlords had to obey the orders of the Doras. Students, what is more pathetic is that Doras enforced rules that restricted the lower caste people from wearing slippers and turbans. In addition, they were supposed to always remain bent before the Doras while addressing them as masters.
There were around 550 Doras in the districts of Mahabubnagar and Nalgonda in the Telangana, who had more than 1,000 acres of land. People like Visnuri Ramachandra Reddy and Channa Reddy Pratap Reddy were a few landlords who owned more than 1 lakh acres of land.
Students, you must have all heard about famines, isn't it? The famines, where there were large food shortages, were prevalent during the British rule. As the taxes and rents were very high, the peasants had very little storages to face crop failures or unsuitable seasons. Students, in addition to these, the food grains were exported to other countries, which further worsened the situations. Also, the large traders stocked food grains and created artificial scarcity, and the government refused to interfere and take action.
There were severe famines in Andhra as well as in the rest of the country in the 19th and 20th centuries. The Ganjam famine of 1865-66 is the most severe famine that occurred in the country, while around 11 famines occurred during the second half of the 19th century. Many thousands of people died. There were struggles for grains in many districts of Andhra, which were suppressed by the troops. In addition, the lack of irrigation facilities led to regular famines in the districts of Rayalaseema.
Students, as you have seen, the peasants struggled a lot with the different kinds of land revenues, besides suppression by the landlords and money lenders. There were protests by the peasants against the landlords, merchants and the state officials.
The Deccan riots of 1860s, the Rampa Fituris, Mopila agitations were some of the popular peasant movements that have assumed organized forms. When it came to 19th century, the peasant movements took shape of open revolts, while in the 20th century, large number of peasants joined the national movement. During 1920-22, the peasants of Awadh region in Uttar Pradesh took to huge processions as a protest against zamindars who were looting money from them.
The zamindars were boycotted socially and were driven out of the villages. In addition, the peasants did not accept to till the fields of the zamindars.
Kisan Sabhas were formed to take the agitation further and demanded the abolition of landlords, decrease in land revenues and control over money lenders.
Students, but all these efforts were suppressed by the zamindars with the help of the British government. We will learn in detail about the Telangana peasants in the next chapter. Students, hope you have now understood the various kinds of land reforms that were prevalent during the olden days in India. Well students, that was all for today's class. We shall meet in the next class with the new chapter. Take care.